London's rents are out of control. The amount people are paying for rent has increased dramatically. Why is this the case? And should people accept this situation? Well, London is still one of the biggest cities in the world. It's globally recognized. It's an important city. It still has that sparkle. But what is the reality? The reality is that because there's a high demand for housing, there is limited supply. Even though that there is a limited supply, the amount the rent is increasing is crazy. It's ridiculous. In most cases, it's up to 30%. So that's an increase in 30%. And people are struggling. If you try to negotiate with the landlord, they know that they are in a position of power, so they don't have to compromise. Why would they want to compromise when they can make more profit? There is no cap on the amount landlords can charge for rent, which I personally think is unacceptable, especially with the cost of living crisis and people's wages are stagnant or have decreased. So the wages are not increasing, yet landlords seem to think that it's acceptable to increase people's rent because they know they can get away with it. If they can make even more profit, why not? What would you do in that situation? If you were altruistic and you were thinking about other people and their welfare, you may say, no, I don't want to increase the the price of the rent because I know that you need a place to live. So I care about your well-being. But in London, a lot of things are transactional. Even communication is transactional. So why would landlords not want to squeeze as much profit as they can? And there's no one stopping them. If the government came in and said, okay, the amount that you're paying compared to, yes, increase in mortgage, if you're paying a mortgage, if they don't own the property, has increased, but the amount that you're charging is higher than that amount. But that's not being done. There's also an inadequate supply of new housing and good quality housing. The houses that are being built are luxury apartments because these companies know that there will be high earners that will pay for these apartments. So they are thinking about themselves. They're thinking about the bottom line, making profit. Yes, that is important because there's still a business, but how much profit? So there isn't enough quality housing being built. There's also an increase in short-term rentals. Places like Airbnb allow people to rent out their flat or their house for a short term and make a substantial amount of money, especially if their property is in a good location, because people will pay this amount. They're there for a short term. They value convenience. So the people that own these properties, they can make more money short term rather than having to go with an estate agent or try to find tenants themselves. You have people who are property investors or foreign investors who are buying property and not necessarily renting it out. So it can be sitting there for a long time and they're not that worried about it being rented out. I think this is more common in incredibly wealthy areas, but it just goes to show that the government is not really thinking about the everyday person and thinking about their well-being. Property as a business. You have buy-to-let schemes where landlords that have a certain amount of profit, maybe they've had an inheritance or they've built up money. This way they can buy multiple properties and rent them out, but still at high prices because there are no regulations. So a lot of people can see this as a business, and there's nothing stopping them from increasing the prices. And if you look at the condition of some of these flats, it's terrible. You have lots of mold, in particular black mold. There may be things that are broken, a boiler, for example, and there's a lack of communication with the landlord to help to get things fixed. So the quality of the places that people are renting out is subpar. It's really bad, terrible in some cases. But there's no welfare. There's no thinking about, I want to take pride in this place that I'm renting out, and I want the people that are there to be healthy, to be comfortable, to be happy there, because these landlords know if they are unhappy, if the renters are unhappy, the landlord can find someone else fairly quickly, because as I said, there's a huge supply. So there's supply and demand. But the amount that people are paying, it can force people to pay over the odds and sometimes commit to incredibly long leases to try to secure the property. And it just leads to so much stress. And the estate agents, they're not complaining because they have a steady rate of income coming in. They know there's a huge demand. They know that they can vet through the people. They can have bidding wars. People can, if people have lost out on a bidding war, they know the next place they go to, automatically they're going to have to offer a higher price straight away. And this is ridiculous. People are having to spend more than half of their wages on a place to stay. It's ridiculous. Your wages have not increased. But the landlords who are using the properties as investment for their income, they can charge whatever they want. So their wages essentially are being increased. And this tells people that you should be a landlord. If you're a landlord, you can make money at people's expense. And is this the impression that you want to give people? If you are a landlord and you are charging people an acceptable amount and are compassionate towards people, I think you'd get renters who are also compassionate and can communicate with you if something goes wrong and look after the place. But I think when people are struggling and are being taken advantage of, are blatantly being taken advantage of, this is wrong. This needs to stop. It's out of control, completely out of control. But what can be done about it? If more houses are being built, that takes time, but what can be done right now? I think the government, like I said, has to look at this and has to have rent controls in place to stop people being taken advantage of. This is forcing many people to move further out to find more affordable housing. But when you do that and you're still working in central areas, you're spending a lot of money on transport. And then you kind of work out that you're not actually better off because firstly, you're having to spend money on additional transport costs. And then there's the time, the double the time to get to work and get back home. And it's just crazy. But I think people are doing that because they are fed up. They are fed up with the increase in price. And for the landlord, they may think, it's only 100 or 200 pounds more. People can afford that. No, they can't. If the landlords are penny pinching and thinking about getting every penny for themselves, why shouldn't the renters be doing the same? Because that extra increase means they have to make a decision whether to heat or to eat. And this is a reality. It means that you cannot have the heating on for long, or you have to make sacrifices with food. You have to buy less quality food. And you have to make all of these allowances. And at the end of the day, you have to think about your day-to-day living. What is your day-to-day living? you are essentially working to survive. You're not even working to live anymore. It's just the bare minimum to survive, to pay for all of these things. And you're never being able to save any substantial amount of money so you can own a property in the future. So rent is out of control. It is ridiculously overpriced, especially for what you are getting. And the everyday life, the quality of life has decreased. And this leads to an overall feeling of depression, of hopelessness. If you're having to take extra jobs now to pay for this increase, you're having to have side hustles, having to make allowances. And this isn't fair. This isn't fair because a lot of it, I think, comes down to greed. It comes down to the individualistic nature, people trying to grab as much as they can, even if it's an extra £100, for example. If that person has a few properties, it's an extra £300 a month for that landlord. And what will they do with that money? Maybe they will spend it on more takeaways or upgrading their flight ticket. And for them, that's something they're thinking about. But for the renters, it's so much more impactful because it impacts their essentials. So something has to be done about the price of rent. Something must be done. The government needs to look at what people are charging for rent in relation to how much people are earning and reduce this down, because it just seems like it's only going to get worse and people are going to be pushed out or have more health issues. And then this will cause more of an impact on the healthcare system. What do you think about the rent? Is it acceptable to be paying so much for rent?